We're calling to order the Planning Committee meeting for March 24th. Can we get a roll call, please?
Good morning. Vice Chair Ranjiv Kush.
Here.
Director Diana Mayer.
Here.
Director Matt Sampson.
Here.
Director Jed Smith.
Here.
And Chair Larry Russell.
Here. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments?
There are none.
Roll call, please.
Vice Chair Kush.
Aye.
Director Mayer.
Aye.
Director Sampson.
Yes.
Director Smith.
Aye.
Chair Russell.
Aye. Public comment on non-agenda matters.
There are none.
Cool. Okay. Need a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Vice Chair Kush.
Aye.
Director Mayer.
Aye.
Director Sampson.
Yes.
Director Smith.
Aye.
Chair Russell.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, exciting subject, portable toilet services.
Morning, committee members. I'm Sean Horn, Director of Watershed Resources. I'm here with Carly Blanchard, our environmental planner. The item before you is update to the watershed's portable restrooms. I'm going to hand it to Carly to talk you through the bid process and the review and comment for this item.
Good morning, committee members. We bring you a proposed portable toilet services agreement for watershed facilities for fiscal years 2027 through 2029, a 3-year period. We awarded a contract to United Rentals in 2018 and have since amended that contract over the past few years here into fiscal year 2026. We're planning to go out to bid next week with the bid opening on April 16th, and we'll bring back the approval of the contract to the board of directors planned for May to award to the lowest bidder.
Just note that we have 28 sites or 28 rentals at about 20 sites or so across the watershed. We did have that spike during COVID. We brought our total servicing and number of restrooms down to kind of a stable number, and it's about $100,000 a year-ish is what we're estimating for this ongoing contract. So with that, we'll take any questions you have about it.
Servicing once a week now or twice?
Some of them still have 2 days a week. So Lake Lagunitas, Bontempe, and then some of the remote ones are once a week.
Have we given any thought to Sulahuli?
In terms of restrooms, we have some out there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
The last time I was there weren't any.
Yeah.
Questions?
Nope.
No. Just as we look to the future here, in terms of developing infrastructure at Sky Oaks and the area here, would we be including more permanent toilet facilities out there?
It's always something we can look at. There were historically ones at Lake Lagunitas. We have actual, facilities at Deer Park entrance. The maintenance of them is pretty tough when you think about servicing those and having rangers or maintenance staff assigned to cleaning those types of restrooms. So there's an efficiency and a benefit to having kind of portable facilities. But yeah, it's always something we can continue to look at.
Great. Thank you. That was it.
Public comment? Okay. I think this is just review, right? So,
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Muir Beach Water System Intertie.
As they're coming up, I have a kind of to provide some context for this item. This is a bit unusual in terms of what we're normally bringing to the board, our district projects. This is not a district project per se, and you'll hear it's outside our service area and the like. However, the concept of the project is to provide Marin water to the Muir Beach community in certain times and certain conditions to benefit endangered species. You'll hear all about that. So certainly there's a district interest. And so I'm bringing it in that context.
Good morning, directors. I'm Alicia Irish, the engineering manager and planning. I'm here today with Jonathan Kaler, our fisheries program manager, and we're here to give a presentation on the Muir Beach Water System Intertie. So today we'll kind of talk about some background and project goals. Give a description of the project that's proposed, talk about its benefits, some of its challenges, and kind of wrap it up with some next steps. So Redwood Creek is the watershed that starts in the headwaters of Mount Tam and it discharges into the ocean at the town of Muir Beach. The community of Muir Beach, which is located right at the end of the creek, relies on groundwater wells that pull from the underflow of Redwood Creek for drinking water. In drought conditions, there's lower water levels in the creek, which sparks some concerns about the water availability for the community, as well as limiting habitat for the endangered steelhead and coho populations. In 2023, a group of regional partners started exploring the feasibility of connecting the community of Muir Beach to Marin water system via a pipeline extension through Muir Woods. You can see on the right-hand side the number of project partners, some of the project partners that are listed, including the community of Muir Beach, the county of Marin, and then some NGOs like Marin Conservation League and the Nature Conservancy. For this, we're acting as a project advisor along with the National Park Service. So in 2023-2024, the County of Marin funded a feasibility study, a technical and constructability feasibility study, with an addendum completed this past winter, 2025-2026, to evaluate if this could happen. Could we connect the systems? Some of the goals that we would like to see, or that the project partners would like to see if this project were to be implemented, are the support of the recovery of the federally listed species, the salmon and the trout, improved long-term drinking water reliability for the community of Muir Beach, increased wildfire resilience in Greater Marin County, and then there's a timing component for this project. So the Frank Valley Road, which is the road that connects Muir Woods to Muir Beach, is getting a roadway restoration. It's a grant-funded project that the County of Marin has received through the Federal Highway Administration that's scheduled to begin in 2028. So one of the main goals is to construct this project ahead of that grant-funded road project. So kind of talking about what the project entails. You can see it's a bit of a busy map here, but towards the top of the map, you see some orange lines. That's our system. That's the top of Mount Tam. That's where you might be familiar with the Nature Friends Tourist Club is located. And there's a Marin water meter there servicing Muir Woods National Park. That kind of green segment below that is the private pipeline owned by the National Park Service that takes water from that meter to the Muir Woods like visitor center area. The proposed project is in the dark blue in the middle, and that takes place along Frank Valley Road, and it's about 2 miles of proposed pipeline that travels along the road. It goes along the bridges, and it would end at the Community Services District of Muir Beach, their pump house, where their pumps and their storage tanks are located. At that point, Marin Water System would be connected to Muir Beach's system because they have their own distribution system going from their tanks to the residences and homes of Muir Beach. So the project that we're talking about is approximately 2 miles of 8-inch pipeline to be installed in the road prior to the roadway restoration project. You know, the benefits align with the goals. You know, we really want to benefit the aquatic species. The thought is that pulling less water out of the ground provides more water in the creek for fish and other wildlife. And then also the secondary benefits of improved drinking water reliability and wildfire resilience. So along with benefits, there's challenges. We've broken it out into these 3 main categories here. First is financial. The project partners are envisioning a 100% grant-funded project. The project group is currently pursuing grant opportunities, but due to constraints, including Proposition 218, the district is not going to be contributing financially to this project. Going into some of the other technical challenges, there is a timing component. We know that projects take time to design, they take time to go through environmental review, the CEQA NEPA, the permitting, it all is time driven, as well as the design. And so this needs to get done in advance or in conjunction with the county road project. So we're approaching kind of critical time here. If we were to think about installing the pipeline outside of the roadway to alleviate some of that time, it makes the cost go up, right? You're impacting land, you're creating retaining walls, you're kind of going into areas that are no longer the public right of way. There might be some property issues, et cetera. So staying in the roadway is the most efficient for an engineering perspective. And then there are some, contract challenges as well. And we're not talking about annexing Muir Beach into our service area. So there would be a contract that would be developed between the district and Muir Beach. The district would need to work with Muir Beach as well as the National Park Service to develop a billing structure because the Muir Beach water would be going through the National Park pipeline. And under this contract approach, the theory is that there would be no connection fee as Muir Beach is not buying into our system. So some of these next steps, the project team is continuing to pursue grant opportunities and they're reaching out to regulators as we speak. Marin Conservation League has kind of stepped up to be the grant sponsor for all of these. And Marin Water is continuing to provide advisory support in limited fashion as the project partners request. So that's all we have. Thank you so much.
Questions?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and the hard work. Have you looked at any studies on the impact of their taking from the well water on the fisheries down there? I know conceptually it makes sense, and that creek has dried up, especially during the drought. But how much have you studied that? Or
Yeah, so I haven't directly studied it. The district hasn't been involved in those studies, but in 2024, Balance Hydrologics did a study for the National Park Service, and they did find a pretty compelling connection between groundwater well withdrawal and levels in the stream. So the concern there being one that you reduce the amount of flow in the creek, but you also disconnect pools and then potentially could drive down dissolved oxygen and water quality. So those connections seem pretty real from my read of the study. So yeah, that is
great. Well, I mean, maybe I'll speak to the board because I've been working very, very closely on this, and there's no real approval that we have right now, but it is taking some bit of staff time. And the reason why I think it's important for us to continue to put some level of energy into this is that this truly is a once in a lifetime opportunity for Muir Beach to get access to water that does not drain this watershed. This watershed comes right through Muir Woods. Redwood Creek is a historic place, and the impact on the fisheries is actually I think I've seen some other studies, especially during the drought, which was pretty bad. They had like one drought came in one year, and that was it. But the reason why this project is happening is, as Alicia mentioned, is that the road is going to get reconstructed. That road has fallen in a couple places, and they have federal and state money, and that money is happening. The road's going to get built, and once that road's built, we're never going to be able to fix this problem. So it's kind of like a now or never opportunity. And Marin Water happens to be uniquely positioned as we already have a pipe going right down to Muir Woods, all the way down the hill. And we know how to build pipelines, and we're, I think, as good fisheries experts as they get in the county. So by partnering with these agencies, I think we're being good neighbors and good citizens. And I really appreciate the work so far, Ben, that you've put in, and Alicia, that you put in to see if this is even viable. The only way this really ever gets done is if the highway project gets put off longer, because we're time constraint. So far, it's been put off twice, and I think it's going to most likely get put off again. So it's definitely not 100% guaranteed this is going to happen, but those are my thoughts.
I had two questions. Can you spell out a little bit? Is the idea, just if you could tell me really briefly, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but the Prop 218 is the idea that we would somehow be subsidizing, or why does that? Yeah, maybe Jared, you could answer that. Why that?
Yeah, so Prop 218 would play a role currently, right? If the district was expending funds to fund the project,
Right.
That's why we're not expending any district funds, because district ratepayers can't subsidize that project or that system, especially since it's outside the district's service
I
area
see.
and
Okay.
not for district customers, essentially what it would be.
Okay.
And, I think the idea is the district would actually be acting more like, Sonoma Water is for us, where we're basically a water wholesaler, I think is what the arrangement would kind of look like.
The other kind of related issue is, because I have seen this kind of project work in a different way, where the agency like ours would be heavily invested in it. And in those cases would be where there's kind of a return on investment to the ratepayers, meaning if they're going to benefit from tying in someone else and you have it's a sizable, here we're talking about a relatively small, very small amount of water. So there's not a financial benefit per se to our ratepayers that would offset or give us a return on investment of expending money in this project. So we're being very thoughtful, very cautious, and most of the staff resources are mine. That doesn't really count because I just work longer in the day. There's not a direct cost to the district, to be clear.
Okay. And I'm having trouble pulling up the agenda packet, but in the agenda packet I was reading last night that we would purchase water. So can you explain that? I was really confused. Why are we purchasing water if we're using, it said that we would have to execute some kind of a contract to
Right.
purchase.
They'd be purchasing our water as a
Okay,
concept.
that makes a lot more
Yeah.
sense.
So,
Or actually the Muir Woods' water, right?
well, really, so at the tourist club meter, Muir Woods would continue to get their water, and then some of the water would be diverted and there'd be a meter there to account for that.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yep, thank you for that. And I think, it's very interesting in hearing the compelling argument for the rehabilitation of the creek, the lower end, and that actually has an impact for the groundwater. Can you remind us what the estimate water use from Muir Beach would be annually for their take?
Yeah, so they have a demand of about 35,000 gallons per day, and they are considering using this pipeline only for about 3 months out of the year. So they're only wanting or thinking that they would use it during the summer months, and outside of those summer months, they would continue to utilize their groundwater wells.
And who regulates that?
Regulates what?
When they take water? I mean, is there going to be some sort of constraint that has to deal with habitat preservation in the creek, or is this just letting them do what they want to do?
I think that would depend on the contract structure, right?
Yeah, I think that that's basically the guardrails would be established by your contractual obligation, similar to our Sonoma water rights agreement, right? Where we purchase and we have a minimum take or pay. I think you would establish, they could take up to a certain amounts during certain months potentially.
So we're actually still going to be regulating when they can and can't get water.
I think that would be an option under the contract that you would negotiate with them. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think not buying into the system is something that I get concerned with, because at the end of the day, obviously the devil's in the details in these contracts. But if the pipe fails in 10 years, who's on the hook for it? Where are the cost sharing going, et cetera? And I think there's going to it'd be more interesting to see what we would like to see in a contract going forward, because that's going to be really where the rubber meets the road on this one.
Yeah, a couple points. The infrastructure, absolutely. The ownership of that new pipe will need to be very clear in terms of ownership, replacement, maintenance, et cetera. And the one thing we're clear on, and we've conveyed it to the project team, it won't be Marin water. So this is not going to be our pipeline. We are not going to have responsibilities for it. Most likely it would be Muir Beach, Services District. They have a distribution system existing. So likely they would take ownership and all responsibilities for this. So really as I think about it, kind of our responsibilities once the project would be established is just ensuring that the sub-metering arrangement that has been set up is working. And that was in response to Director Mayer's question, where there's one meter, there'll have to be a second meter to know, right, balance of water of who's getting between the two parties of Muir Woods and Muir Beach.
Great. So then would we still have oversight on the engineering component of the pipeline if the funding was available down, or is that going to be completely out of our
I
hands?
wouldn't call it oversight, again, based on the very limited kind of 218 driven role we can play. What we've conveyed is we certainly acknowledge that we have the expertise in systems, and we would be a project advisor, attend project meetings, and help them. They presumably would have a very qualified consulting engineer that would be doing the design. So we would just weigh in as needed with advice.
Gotcha. Great. And I think on the merits of the project, there's a lot of stuff that we should look at, and I think it's good, but I do think we can't lose sight of the fact that, you know, we're trying to find more water everywhere else for our district, and then we're looking to give some away on another end. So just want to make sure that remains balanced. That was it.
Thanks for Alicia, Jonathan, for the update, and thanks, Jed, for the background. Ben, following up on what you said, if we're not managing the construction directly, who is the body or agency that will be working with the contractors to develop the pipeline?
I think it'll be a group, a team that presumably, and so far the county has been very involved, and county public works has expertise. We would support it. So it would be, there's probably an outstanding question of who would do the contract inspection. Potentially that could be done by construction inspection. That could be done by contract potentially as well. So our role just continues to be limited. It's an interesting project, you know, in the good neighbor sense, as Director Smith noted. So we've been participating on discussions and calls and kind of helping frame it to kind of give it the best chance of succeeding.
Yeah. It's tricky stuff. My parents live in a community close to Davis, north of us, and they relied on their own community supply, and then the state came in and said that water is contaminated with nitrates and not fit for drinking, and they were forced to tie into the city of Davis water supply. And I mean, I think that was a 10-year process, and pretty fraught and expensive for everybody. So I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about how those details get sorted out.
It's really a challenge. Is, you know, we look at all the West Marin communities, to bring a reliable source of water to them conceptually really makes sense. The population is so small, though, it's difficult to do and, you know, get that return, and who's going to pay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say this is a remarkably important project, and I can't understate how important this is. The Muir Beach community will have resiliency in drought that they don't now if that creek dries up. We'll have pressurized pipe that will go to that community, that will go through, you know, potential fire hazard areas where we can put in hydrants that don't exist. We can help protect the salmon and the wildlife in that watershed. We already have a pipe that goes almost all the way down there. I hope people can go beyond maybe some of the expense and realize that this is going to be funded outside, and we can really provide some unique expertise to get it done. It's driven by the county, it's driven by the state, and we're one of, as Alicia said, 8 partners that would help make this happen. That I think if it doesn't, it will never happen.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Any reason why the pipe is so big?
Well, right now the National Park Service pipe is an 8-inch pipe, and based off of the, you know, constructability study that was performed, that was the size that was recommended. We can reevaluate. Maybe it could go down to 6-inch, but it's really not going to affect the cost of the project by much.
Yeah, I was surprised about the cost. It's a little healthy.
Yeah, I mean, but if we think about it, right, our pipelines are over $3 million per mile right now, and that's for a run-of-the-mill neighborhood street. We're going into a very rural area. It's a cut and fill road, so that adds complexity. The permitting is far higher than our typical pipeline projects, and the environmental review is going to be a lengthier process. So there's just a number of areas across the project that make it a little bit more complex, and there might be some timing challenges, or we need to go faster than we might normally. So I don't think it's that far off, $5 to $10 million for over 2 miles of pipeline. But we will see, if grant funding becomes available. And to clarify, the grant opportunities that the partners are going after right now are just for design and permitting. They're not for the construction phase.
Chair Russell, can I ask one more question? Sure. I think it would be helpful to understand with this, because there's a lot of good information being put out, whether it's the environmental component, resiliency component. What's going to be our ask for this project at the end of the day, in terms of what are we going to be asked to do at some point? Besides develop a contract to sell water to Muir Beach, is there anything else that we're going to be?
I don't think so. I think it's really what you've heard today, kind of go through, and I think the board appreciates, that'll be a process, figuring out the contract and terms. And then, in the development of the project, continue to share our expertise in an advisory role. That's really what we've established as our role. And I think the partners understand and appreciate the constraints we're under and the need to keep it relatively narrow, yet continue supporting.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
Do we consider putting it in the shoulder instead of in the roadway?
We did. So that was what the addendum
That's what I
addressed.
remember the original concept was running down the shoulder.
That could have been. We've actually found files relating to this dating back to like the 70s. Terry Thomas, formerly with MCL, has been talking about this for quite some time. But just to get back to your question, in 2023, the feasibility study looked at the pipe just in the road, and the addendum took the pipe out of the road. And some of the challenges is when you go in the shoulder on the uphill side, you have to dig into, the shoulder's not quite wide enough. So you have to do some retaining walls. You've got PG&E poles to navigate, and it's not quite as, just put it in the gutter. On the downhill slope, the county's proposing to put in a geogrid, which complicates it a little bit. And then you need to put in some retaining walls to fill it. So it just kind of makes the cost escalate.
It just seems kind of crazy to me to have to pave it and then the road's going to be fixed.
Well, if it goes in the road, the paving would be like kind of.
The idea would be done in conjunction with the paving. Yeah, so it wouldn't have the paving costs, but also, it wouldn't, there'll be a 10-year moratorium, I believe, on the road once it's reconstructed.
Cool. Public comment?
Yes, Larry Menikis, please.
Yes, good morning. I just want to reiterate that MCL does support this project for Jed for many of the reasons that you pointed out. So I'm not going to repeat those. And it's just amazing to see what should be relatively easy project. And I mean, it makes sense on so many levels, be so complicated. And really, it looks like the reason is that there's so many entities involved in this and that grant funding has to be found. And so hopefully that grant funding will be found for this and it can go forward because it really is a good project. And looking into the future, there's going to be a point that Muir Woods may need to look at alternate supplies. So this is the time to look at it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Larry.
There are no further speakers.
Okay. Thank you. Phoenix and Bontempi outlet valve design contract. Hi, Alex.
Good morning, Chair Russell, board members, Alex and I, Engineering Director. I'm joining Alicia here this morning to bring the Phoenix Bontempi outlet valve project. So I'll let Alicia walk us through.
Hi again. So as you know, the district owns and operates 7 dams and reservoirs. 2 of these dams, Phoenix and Bontempi, have outlet valves that have reached the end of their useful life and are in need of replacement. Phoenix Dam is located at the top of Corte Madera Creek, is an earth embankment dam originally constructed in 1907 and raised in 1969. Since that time, only routine maintenance has been performed. The outlet valve is currently at the end of its useful life and no longer closes properly. It needs to be replaced. Bontempi Dam is also an earth embankment dam, originally constructed in 1949. In 2024, crews identified a hydraulic leak on one of these valves, and in 2025, we performed an underwater inspection with the assistance of Underwater Resources, a specialized underwater construction firm, who also confirmed that the valve needs to be replaced. So the district received a proposal from GEI Consultants, a firm that has over 50 years of experience in dam design and safety retrofits, and also includes employees formerly with DSOD. The proposed work focuses on replacements of both of these valves at Phoenix and Bontempi, including their outlet control elements and associated actuation systems. The proposal submitted by GEI provides a comprehensive approach based on their subject matter expertise, familiarity with the district system for performing work on the district's dam assessments, and the district staff recommend that the district select GEI to proceed with the Phoenix and Bontempi outlet valve design contract. The total budget for this contract is a little over $1.3 million, and the proposed design services are anticipated to be complete in April of 2027. Staff recommends that the Planning Committee review and comment on this contract.
This is the valve that leaks. Is that right? Right. The water is released out of there that we're not planning, or
At Phoenix, it's the valve that's inside the lake
It's
itself.
actually in the
Inside-
dam.
It's in the lake, not the one that's outside downstream.
not the downstream. Okay.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. All good. Thanks.
I might have missed this, Alicia. Why is it called Phoenix Bontempi?
Oh, there's valves at two separate lakes. So there's one valve in Phoenix and
Yeah.
one valve in Bontempi.
And they are both
They are both needing to be replaced.
They're both needing to be replaced. And these valves, water that passes through them goes into the creek downstream.
So the one at Phoenix, it passes through this valve and it goes through the cast iron pipe that goes through the dam and then out to Natalie Coffin Green Park. The one in Bontempi goes through the valve that needs to be replaced, and then it goes through the dam intentionally, and then out to the outlet structure, which then feeds into Alpine Lake. Yeah.
Right. I guess there may be some questions about how it affects existing stream flows now in Ross Creek, right? I know this question has come up to us before in the past.
There may be, and we can look into that, but really it's just a replacement. It's not, it's a needed maintenance function for our system to function properly.
Yeah. Hopefully we are able to do that.
Yeah.
Great.
Just to add to that a little bit more, Director Cush, is also part of the yearly inspection for the Division of Safety of Dams. They oversee the safety of the dams, and that's just one component. So this is a feature that's kind of long-standing with them as well, as far as identifying these valves that need to be also looked at and replaced.
Okay. Thank you.
Any idea why it's underwater?
Well, it's the inlet structure. So these are the scour valve intakes. So basically, they need to be at the bottom of the tub, if you will. So if there's an emergency, you open them up and you can drain the lake. So that's why they're not the valve that's outside. They're inside. That's what makes them very challenging. Just the location. It requires divers. It's very complicated conditions to do this kind of work.
Do you think they contemplated that when they put them in?
Back in the 60s, they drained the lake, especially at Phoenix when they raised it, so it was easy to do it then. Bontempi, hard to say.
Yeah, because it seems to be a little awkward at this point in time. It's kind of like a whoops.
But really, in actuality, I mean, these valves are designed to be at the bottom lowest level of all the lakes. If you were to put them up higher, then you wouldn't be able to. So that's it's pretty standard across dams. And
I'm wondering though, something like coatings or, doing it differently.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't have the problems these two valves are having.
we would definitely look into that and make sure we spec out the appropriate size valve with the coatings, cathodic corrosion protection, just to make sure that that's not the issue in the future. So technology is a lot better now than it was back in the 40s and the 60s. So
Sure. Okay. Public comment?
There are none.
Okay. Thank you very much.
thank you.
AMI.
It wasn't.
Yeah, hold on. Is this it?
No, that one's already up.
Hold on. Here. And then that one, right?
No.
Where did it go? Where did it go? Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, let me run it for you then.
Yeah. Okay. You have it? Okay. All right. Thank you, Terry. Craig Lauritsen here, AMI Program Manager, back with another AMI update. Good morning, directors. You can go on to the next slide. So the overview for today's presentation, a review of AMI benefits, some policy considerations, an update on the RFP process, project cost update, talk about approaches to implementation, and close with next steps. Next slide. So reviewing AMI benefits, AMI systems have benefits on both the customer side and the distribution side of the meter. Some of those main benefits to customers are connecting them to their water use pattern through a customer-facing portal and automated leak alerts. As you know, many leaks can go undetected for months, and oftentimes the customers find out about them when they get a high bill. And some of those undetected leaks are service line leaks between the meter and the house that may not surface, or an irrigation valve that's partially open, just seeping into the landscape through the irrigation system, running toilets on maybe a guest bathroom. And with bi-monthly reading, you get a high bill and you try to figure out what caused it. With AMI, you might be able to prevent the high bill from ever happening. And then another benefit is targeted outreach and messaging during drought. So AMI will be a very useful tool during the next drought. Some of the operational efficiencies, fewer truck rolls for collecting reads for billing, move in, move out, verify reads. Also, reduced truck rolls lead to reduced fuel consumption and vehicle maintenance, and then streamlined billing and customer service processes. And then granular data enables better system diagnostics and demand forecasting. So that granular AMI data can help, with daily distribution. And then finally, detecting backflow conditions. Through bi-monthly data, you're not going to see individual backflow events, but you can see them through that granular data. Next slide.
So a couple policies to consider under an AMI system. The first one being opt-outs, that some customers may be concerned with AMI technology, and we anticipate an opt-out rate of 1 to 5% across our meter population. And in talking to other utilities in the Bay Area and around California, opt-outs are just a part of an AMI rollout. And when an opt-out policy is in place, it tends to lead to less opt-outs. A couple examples that I've seen in other policies are that opt-out customers aren't eligible for leak adjustments because AMI can help with that. And then recovering the cost of manually reading meters, which over time escalates to actual cost. So the idea is to nudge folks away from opting out because, you know, based on the 1 to 5%, 95 to 99% of customers are either embracing AMI, and we get calls all the time about people asking when is AMI happening, or they're indifferent to AMI. So it's that, you know, pretty small fraction that are you know, interested in opting out. Either way, staff will continue to review and return to the board with a recommendation on more specifically on an opt-out policy. And the next policy consideration, leak adjustments. So I start with a question: how should we think about this policy in light of AMI? Because we have a leak adjustment policy right now, but it was created under a bi-monthly manual read system, right? Knowing that leaks can go on for months, you know, and you don't find out about it till the bill arrives. But does it make sense to, you know, adjust a leak that goes on for 2 months when you can find out about it in 2 days, right? So once deployed, that granular data and automated leak alerts will enable a comprehensive policy redesign. Again, staff will continue to review and return to the board with a recommendation on a opt-out policy, or both opt-out and leak adjustment. Moving on to the RFP itself and that process, the schedule, the RFP was released on December 8th.
Craig, this is an RFP for what?
For equipment and software. No installation is involved. Yeah, I'll mention that as well in a couple slides. But that's important to point out. The proposals were due on February 9th. The initial evaluation, that staff reviewed those initial proposals in February, and then a short list was selected, and those evaluations are happening here in March. And the plan is to start negotiating with the top ranked proposer here at the end of March, and that would continue on into April.
Who's on the short list?
If I can really quickly, I just kind of want to advise the board, right? We are going to be, excuse me, negotiating. We're going to.
Jared, drink some water.
All right. Maybe that's better. So we'll be negotiating with the top lists, short list vendors. So I just kind of want to advise the board, currently in open session, that, you know, we may not want to reveal who proposed, the amounts, right, all those types of things, because it could negatively impact, excuse me, it could negatively impact our ability in those negotiations, right? Because we would be revealing potentially pricing of the different vendors and those things. And typically a request for proposal process and the proposals would not become available until after selection's made. So just so the board's aware of that. So I may tell Craig, no, don't go there.
Right.
And
So
apologies for that.
Okay, I'll catch up with you after then.
Yeah.
So yeah, in this presentation, no vendor names are listed, and of course, even the proposers themselves are very interested in essentially the competition, and I've let those ones know, especially the ones that didn't get shortlisted, that I'm happy to do a debrief once contracts are signed. Okay, next slide. So as part of the RFP process, I mean, the main goal was a core AMI solution, but we also asked vendors to propose on some additional features, and I've brought those to previous board updates. 2 of those features being acoustic leak detection and remote shutoff valves. You may remember that vendors handle acoustic leak detection differently. There's one vendor that has it built into the meter itself, so the meter is the sensor. Other vendors have separate sensors that can be deployed on the hydrants and valves, mains, you know, on the distribution side. I will say that of the shortlisted vendors, all of them proposed the separate sensor. And those can be installed in fixed locations, so permanently monitoring an area, or they could be deployed as mobile units, so you could take those sensors and move them around the service area. Or if you're worried about, the aging infrastructure or fisheries areas where you really want to stay on top of, maybe leaks when they're still relatively small before they turn into big leaks. So acoustic leak detection, we learned a lot more about it through the RFP process and learned more about pricing, but it's not a core benefit of the AMI system.
In fact, in the reverse, it seems to me that it's a benefit that we should go forward with regardless of AMI.
Right. Because,
especially if everybody's going separate.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have to have can it talk through a phone?
Yeah, I'd say the most common method of communication is cellular, that each one of these units are able to not only correlate with each other, but also send that data to the cloud to identify, leaks as they pop up.
How many of them are we talking about?
For the RFP, we were kind of looking at a price as one unit, not really getting into the entire service area, because we want to learn more about each vendor's technology. But it could be hundreds, it could be thousands of these sensors across the service area.
A lot.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to put in some?
Yeah, possibly through, we have done some pilots with the hydrant loggers and with the, integrated into the meter. And there were some findings on the false positives, of how accurate the leaks were identified. And some of those leaks were real leaks. Some of those leaks were kind of artificially simulated. So that's why I add the bullet. ALD is an evolving technology, and staff will continue to evaluate solutions. And then the next one there, remote shutoff valves. All three of the shortlisted vendors did propose a remote shutoff valve option. However, after reviewing the proposals and the costs, staff determined that the cost benefit for incorporating remote shutoff into the project isn't practical, as it only covers the small meters, 5/8 to 1 inch, and would add $12 million of additional capital to the AMI project. However, the remote shutoff can be used in specific applications. For example, services needing frequent turnoff. So the idea is that if you can avoid a second or third truck roll, then that remote shutoff pays for itself.
Yeah, it's a sexy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely has advantages.
Right. So a summary of the proposals that we received. Once again, this was specific to equipment and software, not installation. Initially, we received 9 proposals, which did show quite a bit of interest in the project. The capital cost ranged from 13.5 to 20.4 million, and the average annual operating across those 9 proposals was 100 to 440,000 a year. Staff reviewed and ranked.
Payment to the vendor.
I'm sorry?
The annual operating, is that our cost or a payment to the vendor?
Payment to the vendor, yeah.
Largely cellular costs.
Yeah, that's why there's such a big range in average annual operating. The fixed network systems tend to have a higher cost up front to install the system, and then the cellular is more on operating. So staff reviewed and ranked the initial 9 proposals. 3 were shortlisted, and those shortlisted vendors presented to staff earlier this month, and staff is currently evaluating the shortlist proposals. Next slide. So a project cost update, and then there's also separating out traditional or a contractor install versus in-house or district staff install. So I've got columns there for the traditional versus in-house. So the equipment and software, regardless of who's installing it, it's the same equipment. So that's 15 million for either. Operating, that's over the 15-year life cycle, approximately 4 million. Contingency and tax, again, same system being installed, same price. The installation is where you see a big difference. So for the traditional or contractor, there's the 14 million minus 3 million, and explain the minus 3 million in a moment. And then the in-house or district staff is the 5 million minus 3 equals 2 million. So where the minus 3 million comes from is we already have a funded meter change program around 300,000 a year. So if you look out over the next 10 years, about $3 million is going to be spent on replacing old meters regardless of AMI. So the idea of the minus 3 is that you can basically suspend the meter change program as we know it now, and that money could go towards the new AMI system. So that the net 11 million or 2 million is the added cost of the AMI project, kind of benefiting from that money that we already spend on changing meters. So rolling up those two columns, the 15-year life cycle present value is 33 million versus 24. So a noticeable $9 million difference for the contractor versus the in-house. The next couple slides will go in a little bit deeper into, yeah, you can go ahead, into that district installed approach. So regardless of AMI, meter operations strives to replace 5% of our meters per year through an existing meter change program. And by augmenting that team with 2 additional temporary staff and focusing on completing routes and high-use meters, we can achieve 2 items. The first one, 60% of billed water on AMI within 3 years, and the second one, completing the project within 10. So to add a little bit to those last 2 bullets, the 60% in 3 years comes from the fact that 20% of our meters use 60% of the water right across our service area. Those 20%, a quarter of them are already on AMI. That was through earlier AMI pilots that are still well within their useful life, that equipment still has many years of value. So if the goal is to ultimately get 100% of billed water on AMI, well, we can get to 60% of that in the first 3 years by targeting those remaining 20%, which are disproportionately large meters. Many of them are already AMI ready. They just need an endpoint plugged in. They're already a digital meter. They're just being read manually. So that's the first one. And then the second one, completing the project within 10 years, you might notice a discrepancy between the 5%. Basic math tells us a 5% replacement rate would be a 20-year project. However, how we cut that in half is 2 ways. The additional temporary staff would be focusing on meter changes. However, everyone in meter operations changes meters, they just spend most of their time reading meters. So with that completing within 10 years, you get a accelerator, a teeter-totter effect that as AMI is installed, it reduces manual reading time. Because right now we're reading over 7,000 meters per week manually. That's a lot of walking, a lot of pulling lids. So as that manual read burden goes down, it frees up time for AMI install. So the idea is that every year of the project, more AMI is being installed because there's less manual reading happening. So you kind of tilt it towards more installs throughout the life of the project. Okay, next one. And another slide on the district installed approach. Some of the benefits, the first one there, will build and maintain institutional knowledge of the AMI system. If we rely on a contractor install, we're the ones maintaining the system. Where if the same department is installing and maintaining it, then they have a deep knowledge of what's in the ground versus just waiting for the contractor to be done and then being left with the maintenance. The second one there, avoiding the battery cliff, spreading out installation time frame in turn spreads out future failure rates as the system reaches end of life. So as you know, batteries power what's in the ground, and those batteries are, hey, they're warranted for 10, they're prorated for 20, they're going to last probably 15 to 18 before you start getting failure rates. So a concentrated install leads to a concentrated failure. And the idea is if we can handle the deployment, then we can also handle the replacement down the road.
Are they making them more user-friendly for replacement?
For the large meters, yes, where some of them offer just like a register swap or a chamber swap or actual replaceable batteries, because there's so many resources that go into changing a large meter. For small meters, for the most part, it's a full replacement. Even the ones that you can just replace the register, the idea is by that 15 to 20 years, the accuracy has gone down on the meter. It's starting to slip. So it's probably due for full replacement anyway. So I'd say large meters, there's more of a servicing potential, but small meters are swap them out. So that was the battery cliff. And then the next one, incorporating emerging technologies throughout deployment. So if you put it in really quickly, you're basically locking in today's technology for the next 15 plus years. By phasing in the installs over a longer period of time, I've seen huge advancements in these bells and whistles, the pressure, temperature, ALD, water quality monitoring. So as those features become available or even common or standard, that those could be phased in throughout the life of the project versus kind of locking in what's available today. And then the last one's a big one. By kind of spreading out deployment, it allows staff to focus on our aging IT infrastructure and the critical SAP renewal project, which, AMI is there's a lot of overlap between AMI and IT, especially when it comes to integration. So, the SAP renewal project, that one has the essential nature of it and the time frame of it, where AMI has a little more flexibility.
You just touch on the ability to incorporate emerging technologies, because I think that's an interesting component of that. Does our RFP right now allow us to buy these meters over the course of 10 years? Or are we buying everything today and then putting it in a warehouse?
Right. Definitely spreading it out over years. They'll usually have, or the proposers all said this is year one price, and then subsequent years are, CPI. So there is an inflator built in, but because of the battery life issue, you usually don't want to have more than a year supply at any one time. So there is this expectation that you're kind of buying them as you're installing them, because they do have a shelf life.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, that was it for that one. So next steps, completing the RFP evaluations and initiating contract negotiations. We're going to continue to meet internally to further develop that district installed approach. And then, of course, returning to the board with updates.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions?
Yeah, I think it really would be good for us to see what's different in this plan. I kind of understand you've delayed the full deployment. So it would be good to be really, really, really clear with us what's getting delayed and how much. I think we had a plan to have this fully deployed within 5 years, and now it's 10, I think. And I think you had a rollout over time. I'm not saying I'm against this. I think everything you're saying probably makes sense, but I think you just want to be really clear with us about your analytics behind why you're doing what you're doing. And then more detail about how you're thinking about deployment and the benefits of going after that 60% or the higher water users, and the benefit for the district versus a slower deployment. So a little more analytics on the impact, both financially, time-wise, and water savings. So I don't know. This is just an update, right? But it does impact the RFP. So how do we think about how to be supportive here?
Yeah, so we're interested in feedback from the board, particularly as Director Smith is doing in regards to kind of this opportunity to shift how we install them. And we were planning on kind of a contract install, 2 to 3 year period, knock it out versus this. And you can see this saves us money. And really the big driver is was noted is our IT staff, our IT infrastructure needs a lot of attention, and they're doing it, but it's work just keeping phones and emails and core systems working, and kind of renewal of the infrastructure at the same time is really complex that we've been talking about an important SAP project. So this just, felt like it could be the straw. We have a small staff, relatively new IT staff, and this stretching the time out for AMI does give the IT staff some breathing room to focus on IT infrastructure and SAP, which is very important for the organization. And we were finding that this AMI, the aggressive AMI schedule, was sort of tail wagging the dog a bit. So yeah, I do think, and we'll come back with clarity on how we're kind of the details of deployment of the implementation and what that looks like. Likely when we come back to the board on the technology provider, to award some sort of contract, we'll update on addressing all these questions in terms of the installation.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Craig, for the update. One thing I think I'm hearing, Craig, is that with this more gradual deployment option, that we are able to, and I might be wrong on this. This is a question that are we able to offset some of the capital costs and operating costs with existing, budget line items for meter replacement and meter reading? So, in other words, if we were to do it very quickly, that would be a fairly large upfront capital investment. But if it's more gradual, are we able to reallocate resources from the traditional meter replacements, which you're saying we do, I don't know, 5% every year, and instead funnel those resources into the AMI program? Is that something you were trying to convey, or am I confused on that?
Yeah, the idea is that there's two parts. We need to select equipment and software, and then how do we get it in the ground? That's why we were planning to separate the invitation for bid for the contractor. With the contractor, their goal is to do it as fast as possible and move on to the next project. And there's some efficiencies in doing it quicker. They're leasing warehouse space. They're paying for their, crew to kind of move through as quickly as possible. But then with the in-house approach is basically taking our existing meter change program that we've done for decades and just supplement it with, hey, you're there to change a meter at an endpoint. Like now it's AMI and you were there to change it anyway. And then by adding some staff, some temporary staff, that will allow to accelerate, those installs a bit while the normal manual reading is still happening. And I mean, for what it's worth, right now we're 9% AMI. Roughly 5,700 meters are AMI. 100% of those installs were done with in-house staff. So I get it for utilities that don't have an active meter change program, or AMI is new to them. It's very intimidating, and it may make sense to bring on a contractor and say, like, we want to be AMI. How do we get there? Well, we've been installing AMI since 2018, so if anything, the in-house install is actually more familiar than that contractor approach. And for me, I mean, if I could snap my fingers and be full AMI tomorrow, I would be interested. However, if I could look back and say we started installing AMI 10 years ago, I would feel almost better about the system, that it's not going to all crash at the same time. Because otherwise, you put this data on the calendar that you got to do it all over again. So, there's almost a comfort in knowing that you can maintain the AMI system and not just wait for it to expire.
Yeah, but Craig, I guess just to follow on then, if we are, if we do decide to go with the in-house option, I would like to understand our ability to gradually reallocate resources from the existing meter replacement and meter reading program into AMI, so that it may not be an additional AMI expense on top of what we're already doing. There may be some opportunity to reallocate and thus bring down the overall expenditure for AMI. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but it's something I'd like to better understand, because I do think as we go into, maybe lower demand cycles now, lower revenue, a really big upfront expense like AMI is going to get more scrutiny. So if we see any opportunity to rebudget existing expenses towards AMI, it would be interesting to know about.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Um, Thank you for the presentation and for the update. I'm not sure if you're looking for feedback right now on any sort of policy decisions with leak and things like that, but I can give if that's what if you're hoping for today. But tagging on to Director Cush's comments, we've got meter readers right now, and so can you help us understand where those bodies will be reallocated as we move forward with this project?
Yeah, so we have 8 dedicated meter readers, and their title is meter reader repair worker. So the idea is that on any given day, they're either reading meters or maintaining, replacing, fixing leaks, so they kind of wear 2 hats. Right now, about 70% of their time is manually reading meters. There's also there's 8 dedicated readers. There's 2 additional temp staff that we just keep as part of the department to help with that ongoing meter change program. And the idea is that same team plus the 2 additional temp staff that I talked about would accelerate installs. But on a daily basis, the priority would still be getting the manual billing read, because we need to do that, in the meantime. But as routes are completed with AMI, the next time that route is scheduled to be read, we get the reads through the air, and that frees up those hours for more installs. And then that same team, once AMI is fully deployed, that same team would be maintaining the system. So regardless of the battery issue, there's going to be maintenance issues of meters not reporting or accessing meters that are overgrown. Or
What's the rough percent folks find of meters that aren't reporting on a given day?
Yeah, for the goal is 98.5 to 99%, what they call communication health, or obtaining a billable read, meaning that you have a read within the last 3 days. That's considered a billable read. For our 5,700 meters on any given day, we're at 99.7, 99.8. So, it's 5,700 meters, but Meter Ops does an amazing job. It's like whack-a-mole, right? On any given day, that one's been reporting for years. All of a sudden, it's not. So let's go visit it. So there's always going to be ones that on any given day that aren't reporting. But if you're maintaining the system, you're always keeping that communication health as close to 100%
I
as you
think
can.
where I'm going with it, if you going back to your snap your fingers comment and making with AMI, do we still need the same amount of meter reader staff to support this going forward, especially in light of an additional $400,000 a year cost to actually get the process going back and forth?
Right. I mean, as we get closer to full deployment, we'll see what resources it takes to maintain the system. But definitely, previous feasibility studies and project assessments does show that through attrition, there could be some, that the meter shop will look differently in light of full AMI.
Yeah, because I think, just quick blush at it, I mean, it's got to, right? We have this many people dedicated to meter repair and meter reading. You say 70% of their time's allocated. We're taking away most of that time. And so there should be some sort of savings on that to at least offset the operating cost for that. I mean, people could be reallocated, et cetera, things like
Right.
that. Do you see any benefit with a prolonged or drawn out install with the ability to identify some sort of systemic problem and jump on it quicker?
Yeah, I mean, one of the daunting ideas of the contractor install, like even in a 4-year project, 15,000 installs per year, over 1,000 per month, like issues are going to come at you fast. And talking to other utilities, whether it's like customer service issues or claims resulting in damaging customer plumbing through these meter swaps, the issues come at you like a fire hose. So by doing it slowly, there's going to be issues either way, but they just come at you more slowly, and you can kind of manage them as they roll in. So I'd say you're not necessarily avoiding, those same issues are likely to arise. Although I do see a benefit of, customers interacting with Marin Water staff versus this third-party contractor that sometimes are from out of state, and they're just this unfamiliar crew that is out in people's yards, replacing meters.
I guess if you can keep, if you can get a handle on a problem right away and shut it down, then you're going to, prevent a lot of future work as you roll this out if you are doing it timely. And you said it was estimated a 4-year rollout if we did it through a contractor.
Yeah, the RFP specified a 3 to 4 year deployment.
Okay.
Yeah. But in talking to the vendors, I mean, they want to sell us meters, right? So whether they sell it quickly or slowly, they're not the ones installing them. There's some potential for that bulk discount, buying up front, but a lot of them had knowing our life cycle, they had that inflator built in. So we could, budget for years 6 through 10, because we'd be buying meters, that whole time.
Yeah. And I think, going back to Director Smith's comments about more analytics on how we got to where we're at, you gave us really two options, full on contractor or drawn out process over 2 years. Is there any other option in there with more temp staff that we could potentially shave that down? If that's something that makes sense, it'd be interesting to hear. And that was it.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment. I like the approach, and I think it makes perfect sense. While I understand your comment about overnight having it versus not having it, the reality is that the benefits accrue over time. This is a short-term problem for a very long-term solution. So whether it's done in 2 years or 4 years or 8 years or 10 years, I don't think it really makes much of a difference in the big picture. And I like the idea of using in-house staff for changing, because as you said, they're already there. When my meter was changed, it was zero interruption. I didn't even know it happened until I saw and then not exactly in the yards. They're
At the edge of the property.
yeah,
Right.
sidewalks.
Right.
And that, like I said, I didn't even know what happened until after it was done. So, I don't think most people would be in that same boat. What are we going to do? I mean, when these things come online, will they come online that day?
Yeah.
In moment of installation?
Right. So there's a process of called waking up the endpoint, which happens at the time of installation. And also that gives the installer the opportunity to test the communication at that location.
Sure.
Which are challenging topography. We're not going to have 100%, communication. And then we would look at whether that one's going to be a manual read or it's going to be a drive-by read. Because all these vendors offer a drive-by option that you could Pac-Man around and get those ones
which we currently use on some of the meters, right?
Yeah, very small percentage
drive
is that either drive-by or walk-by. And even the drive-by can pull in that granular data. So it's quite delayed, but at least the graph fills in, upon the drive-by.
Yeah, I'm very excited by it. So I think it's really an important project, and you obviously have a great handle on what's going on. That's good to feel.
That's all I think about.
I have a question. What are our neighbors doing with this? Are they all on AMI? They are.
Right. Like San Francisco,
Done
for
for
example,
years.
they're actually they're on their second life cycle
Of AMI.
North Marin's had it for, I don't know, 8 years.
We're behind the
Right.
curve.
Petaluma, I live in Petaluma. It's been done now. I think this year they finished. So,
And they're all reporting that it was a very positive move.
right. I mean, those AMI benefits, do come to fruition. And it, you kind of go in from manual reading to maintaining the system.
Yeah.
But it's, I think it's just that shift from the manual read to AMI. A lot of our customers are surprised that we still visit the meter 6 times a year, which seems a bit archaic.
It does seem 10 years does seem like a long time given that. But I also know that our budget is not, we're a little concerned about being in the red this year, right? So this would allow us to project some savings for the future. That could be a really positive thing.
That certainly is a benefit. The shift in approach would provide kind of that 4 year, as we're looking at this constraint, a significant help for that.
When I used to read meters for LA Water and Power in the summertime, and we were kind of in a laissez-faire situation. When we finished the reads, we were done for the day. I guess that's not the case here.
No, everyone. I mean, before this position, I ran our meter operations team for 3 to 4 years there, and I mean, everybody's putting in their 40, but the idea is that every morning the team is given their read-in assignments, but they also have their service notifications and work orders, and the idea is that when you're done reading, you're going on to these other works, the repairs, the maintenance. And then we call it repair week. At the end of the month, there's no new reads scheduled. And that's when you can really get into, doing the meter change program or getting caught up. With work orders.
That's a benefit of the classification of meter reader, repair worker. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, because like the guys I worked with had 2 jobs. They could finish the meter reading by noon-ish. And the earliest you could turn your book in was like 1:00. And you had to start at downtown LA and come back to downtown LA to deliver, because there was a book, actually, a 30 binder that you turned in. And, but like I say, they were gone, as soon as they finished.
Right.
And some books were harder than others. We, of course, read electric and water, which makes it a little more complicated, but not too much. Well, that was a great update. Public comment?
Yes, there are 2, Larry Minikis and Martha Davis.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that this is not just a technology upgrade, but it's a targeted demand reduction tool. That other districts using this tool, according to the stats, are saving 5 to 10% over those that aren't. So this is one of our least expensive ways of saving water and should be deployed early. The other thing is the opt-out, it appears it's not legally binding that you can offer it, but you don't have to. But if it's offered and those that take it, there should be full cost recovery for those that do opt out. And if there's a leak, they do not get the benefit of a reduction. And that's the benefit of this. I think the other thing is, I'm finding slide 10 a little difficult, is that it's talking about a 5% per year. So 5%, 20 years, obviously. But what we heard, I don't know if we've heard this before. I wish Phil were here, for that 60% of our water use is 20% of our meters. So obviously that's where we should be focusing in the first 3 years. And perhaps looking at droughts and climate change, it would be good to accelerate this program because of the benefits it's going to bring overall, and reduce it back to a 5-year program as it originally was. There's a lot of benefits here. It's really time to move on this project, and look forward to its deployment. Thank you.
Good morning, Martha Davis. And actually, I had a meeting this morning that ended early, so I decided to come over and cheer you on because this is so important. I mean, every agency I know that has fully done their conversion loves AMI. It is such an amazing tool that helps support not only your customers, but obviously all your staff and your business operations. So just a couple of comments. I thought the conversations were really interesting about how we think about how we implement this type of a project. I had 18 years of experience with the Inland Empire Utilities Agency, and our theory was always you keep your brains inside your organization whenever you can. So to do the coordination of the install and have that being run by your staff internally, the ownership that comes with that is huge. And so I think it's a truly important part of the conversation today. The second is just echoing what Larry just said about the acceleration strategy. There were a lot of moving pieces to this project, and the internal coordination is really important. But also, as you move into it and really make it bigger, what you're going to find is that you're going to have opportunities to look at how you can consider additional acceleration, because everybody who's talked about it has said faster is better as long as you're comfortable in terms of the internal pieces working. So it's a coordination question, which if you can set it up so that you're always asking, where are those savings? So that was a really good question. But also, how do we add some acceleration to it? That is a strategic decision that you can keep coming back to over and over again. So as you look down the road, I think the pathway that is being considered here is terrific, but definitely keeping that foot on the pedal of accelerating it because of the benefits both to the customers and to the business operations of the agency. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Thank you for joining us, Martha and Larry. Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I presume, I don't know this, but I presume the reason Tiburon got the 5,500 meters was high water usage. I mean, I think that's probably was the tie or difficult reads. It's not my part of Tiburon that got it. It's the other side. But it's a really effective tool. And I think that the one thing that wasn't mentioned, which I thought would be mentioned, is that it's really unfair to the user to expect them to reduce water usage and not give them data every 2 months. You know, that's the thing we use the AMI for the most, by far. The rest of it's seamless, basically. It just happens and the bill gets created. But the fact that there is a instantaneous read, like 15 minutes ago, you can look at what happened yesterday, literally. I don't know we do that too much, but I do have, my wife does it. I do have her check us maybe once a month to see what our daily usage is.
Right.
So it's a very effective tool.
I agree.
So all in favor. Okay, cool. Upcoming meeting. The next meeting is April 28th. And with that, we'll adjourn. Thank you all.